Keener's Cowboy, a journey back to health, unbeknownst to him, the millionaire behind the town's sole hospital. Hey, are you still alive? The man on the porch remained silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon, as if weighing the weight of the world in his thoughts. Eleanor Hayes fell to her knees beside him, her cotton nightgown clinging to her legs, drenched by the relentless rain. The man lay sprawled on the ground, his face pressed into the earth, blood seeping from a wound at his temple. His shirt hung in tatters, caked with mud, while his boots bore the scars of a harsh journey, scraped raw by the unforgiving gravel. Beside him, a wide-brimmed hat rested upside down, rainwater pooling in its hollow crown, a silent witness to the chaos that had unfolded. "Sir, can you hear my voice calling out to you?" she demanded, her voice laced with urgency and fear. His fingers danced with a restless energy. With great effort, he turned onto his side, each movement a struggle against the weight of his exhaustion. Rain cascaded down the sharp line of his jaw, a relentless torrent that swept away the remnants of dried blood. He stared at her, his pupils wide and intense, yet locked onto her with unwavering clarity. His lips trembled, struggling to shape the words that hung in the air like a fragile whisper. "Whatever you do, don't involve the authorities." Eleanor stood motionless, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is happening? Do you require medical assistance?" "No, just..." The silence hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that seemed to thrum with unspoken words. The weight of the moment pressed down, urging a response that lingered just out of reach. What lay beneath the surface was a tempest of emotions, swirling and crashing, waiting for the right spark to ignite the storm. "Just one night. That's all I ask." Her gaze swept the surroundings. The woods beyond the barn lay in an unsettling silence, a stillness that felt charged, as if the very air was waiting for something to break the tension. She felt it, the ominous growl of an engine creeping through the shadows of the trees. Flickering lights shimmered in the distance, weaving a mesmerizing dance among the towering pine trunks. "Who was pursuing you?" Her voice barely broke the silence as she whispered. He recoiled, a sharp pang of discomfort flashing across his face. "You cannot. Do you crave the answers?" Eleanor rose to her feet, her heart racing wildly in her chest. With a fierce determination, she seized his arm, yanking him upward with a surprising force that took even her by surprise. "Time is running out. Get moving now. I am unable to do that. You have the power within you, and you will rise to the challenge." With his arms draped over her shoulder, they staggered across the slick, rain-soaked gravel yard, making their way to the shadowy rear of the barn. With trembling hands, she fought against the stubborn hatch concealed beneath the weathered horse trough. As it creaked open, a dark secret emerged, a hidden cellar, once a refuge for feed during the fiercest of storms. "Get in," she hissed, urgency lacing her voice. He gazed at her, utterly bewildered. "Will you take your last breath on my porch, or will you choose to witness the dawn of a new day?" With a strained grunt, he plunged into the darkness of the hole, just as headlights emerged from the bend, casting an ominous glow toward her property. With a fierce determination, she slammed the wooden hatch shut, the sound echoing in the stillness, and yanked an old tarp over it, concealing her secret from prying eyes. With a deep breath, she wiped her trembling hands on her drenched dress and stepped toward the barn's entrance, just as a black pickup truck rumbled into her yard, its presence heavy with unspoken tension. 3 men emerged, their broad shoulders silhouetted against the dim light, dark jackets clinging to their forms. Their eyes roamed the surroundings with the intensity of predators on the hunt. "Evening, ma'am," the driver said, stepping forward with a smile that was polite yet devoid of warmth, a mask that concealed the true nature lurking beneath. "I apologize for intruding at this late hour. A search is underway for an elusive individual. Perhaps they stumbled through this very place, dragging their weary limbs behind them." Eleanor narrowed her eyes, a flicker of determination igniting within her gaze. "Welcome to a realm where boundaries are drawn and secrets lie hidden. This is private property." "Right," he said, a smile lingering on his lips, hinting at secrets untold. "Have you spotted a man wearing a cowboy hat? He stands around 6'1", bloodied, and he took off after stirring up some trouble." Eleanor folded her arms tightly, a storm brewing in her eyes. "No one has ventured this way. Are you absolutely certain about that? Another man inched closer, his footsteps echoing as he circled toward the barn. Curiosity etched on his face. She advanced, her voice climbing with intensity. I insisted that I hadn't laid eyes on a single soul. In this solitary existence, I guard my territory fiercely, and the presence of strangers wandering across my land stirs a deep unease within me. The first man lifted his hands in a feigned gesture of surrender, a glint of mischief dancing in his eyes. I meant no disrespect, ma'am, simply acting, a glimpse into the local patrol's watchful presence. Leave now, or I swear I'll call the sheriff. The three men locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them, thick with unspoken tension. In an instant, they pivoted, their presence fading like a whisper in the wind, and sped away in the truck, leaving only a lingering tension in the air. Eleanor held her breath, watching the taillights fade into the shadows of the trees, and then, with a surge of adrenaline, she dashed back to the barn. With a swift motion, she cast aside the tarp and lifted the hatch, revealing the unknown beneath. They vanished, she murmured, her voice barely breaking the silence. Let's go. We must find a way to get you through those doors. With a pained groan, Garrett Sullivan summoned his strength, leaning on her for support as he fought to rise once more. As she dragged him into the living room, his complexion had turned ghostly, his body trembled uncontrollably, and incoherent words spilled from his lips. With urgency, she gently placed him on the couch before sprinting to the bathroom. With frantic urgency, she tore through the drawers, her hands grasping at gauze, pads, alcohol, and bandages, anything that could offer a glimmer of hope in the chaos. She returned, clutching a bowl of warm water and a towel, her heart pounding fiercely against her ribs. I am not a nurse, she murmured, the words escaping her lips like a secret, meant for her own ears more than his. You better hold on tight, Cowboy. I can't lose you now. As she tended to the deep gash on his head, her heart raced with each wince that escaped his lips, a silent testament to his pain. Apologies, my sincerest apologies. He fell silent, his eyes drifting shut as if to escape the weight of the world around him. His jaw tightened, a silent storm brewing within him. This might sting, she whispered, her breath barely a whisper as she pressed the alcohol-soaked cloth against the jagged cut near his ribcage. Every muscle in his body coiled tightly, ready for what was to come. He let out a slow breath, his voice barely a whisper. It already does. She attempted to smile, but the warmth slipped away almost instantly. Fate smiled upon you the moment I stumbled upon your path. His eyes fluttered open, a newfound gentleness illuminating their depths. Perhaps fate has dealt you a cruel hand. Eleanor halted, the fabric in her grasp drenched in crimson. What is it that makes them hunt you down? I forged formidable foes, substances, wagering your fate, truth, he whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence, a fragile thread woven into the stillness of the night. I spoke the truth, unfiltered and raw. In the shadows of fate, a moment unfolded, wrong place, wrong time. Eleanor's gaze locked onto him, a storm of emotions swirling in her eyes. His gaze held a steady resolve, unwavering even in the face of pain. A profound, ancient, and shattered essence. Rest is essential. Let's save our conversation for the morning. By that time, I will have vanished. No, she declared with unwavering resolve. You will remain right here, bound by my command, until I decide otherwise. He let out a single chuckle, a sound that was both dry and laced with pain. Your words carry a weight, Miss Hayes, Eleanor Hayes. He nodded once, a silent agreement, before surrendering to the darkness behind his eyelids once more. Eleanor lingered beside the couch, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the fire she had just ignited in the hearth, the warmth casting dancing shadows around the room. Her hands shook with a mix of fear and determination as she reached for the blanket, desperate to shield him from the cold reality that surrounded them. Every instinct within her urged her to reach for the phone and alert the sheriff about the injured man lurking in her home, a figure shrouded in mystery and danger. Yet, an unseen force surged forward, resisting with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. A soft voice within her murmured, "He is not the true monster lurking in the shadows." She rose gradually, her gaze fixed on him as he breathed, each inhalation shallow yet unwavering. Eleanor felt the weight of destiny pressing upon her, a clarity igniting within her soul. She understood the path that lay ahead, and the urgency of her mission pulsed through her veins. She extinguished the porch light, secured the door, and remained by the couch throughout the night, ever vigilant for the return of the shadows. The storm had finally relented by morning, leaving the world drenched and eerily still. The mist clung to the pasture like a shroud, enveloping the trees in an eerie, ghostly embrace. Inside the dimly lit cabin, Eleanor treaded softly, her heart pounding as she navigated the shadows. She had transcended the rush of adrenaline. Now doubts began to creep in. What if she had unwittingly sheltered a fugitive? What if those men returned? What if he took his last breath on her couch? With careful steps, she navigated the threshold, a tray laden with steaming tea and golden toast balanced in her hands, the aroma weaving a comforting spell through the air of the living room. Garrett lay motionless, his face pressed against the back of the couch, the rhythm of his slow, steady breaths a haunting reminder of the stillness that enveloped the room. At least that was a flicker of hope in the darkness. With a gentle touch, she placed the tray on the coffee table, her heart racing as she pulled the blanket higher over him, cocooning him in warmth and comfort. "Hey," she whispered, lowering herself beside him, her presence a gentle warmth in the dim light. "Are you awake yet?" Silence lingered in the air, heavy and unyielding. Her hand moved slowly, fingers trembling as they approached his forehead. Radiant. The heat enveloped everything, a suffocating blanket that pressed down on the world. A fever grips you, its heat wrapping around you like a heavy blanket, pulling you deeper into its relentless embrace. She slipped into the bathroom once more, her heart racing as she stumbled upon an ancient thermometer and a bottle of over-the-counter painkillers, remnants of a forgotten past. She berated herself for failing to assemble a more comprehensive first aid kit. As she stepped back into the room, she found him beginning to stir. His brow knitted in concentration, his lips slowly parting, as if to reveal a secret long held within. Samuel stood at the edge of the world, the weight of his name echoing in the silence around him. Eleanor stood motionless, her heart pounding in her chest. That name echoed once more. It was the very phrase that had escaped his lips in the darkness of the night. Before he could utter another word, she slipped the thermometer between his lips, sealing his silence. He narrowed his eyes at her, a swirl of confusion clouding his thoughts. "You have a fever," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of worry brewing inside her. "And you will not escape." He remained silent. She leaned closer, her heart racing as she took his temperature. 180.1. Antibiotics are essential for your recovery. A place where hope and despair intertwine, where the air is thick with the scent of antiseptic and the whispers of anxious families echo through sterile hallways. "No," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper, laden with an unspoken weight. "They will come for me. It seems they have already taken action. Fortune smiles upon you, for I wove a web of deception on your behalf." He shifted slightly, a flicker of pain crossing his face, and locked his gaze with hers. "What drove you to do that?" Eleanor hesitated, the silence stretching between them like a taut wire, her thoughts swirling in a tempest of uncertainty. She gazed at his face, marred by bruises and battered by hardship, yet it still held a fierce, unyielding dignity. "I do not know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, as uncertainty hung heavy in the air. "Yet, I believe I glimpsed something deep within your gaze. Perhaps it was fear, or a haunting sense of urgency. Or perhaps it was the way your gaze pierced through me, as if I were the final glimmer of hope in your world." A faint smile flickered across his lips. "You existed." A surge of something inexplicable coursed through her veins, perhaps a flicker of gratitude or peril. She sprang to her feet in an instant. "As your nurse, I can only hope that fate doesn't conspire against us, leading to an accidental demise. I faced far worse." Eleanor shook her head, a playful glint in her eyes as she fought to suppress a smile. With a gentle touch, she brought him the steaming tea, aiding him to sit up just enough to grasp the warmth of the cup in his hands. "What do they call you?" she inquired, her voice laced with curiosity. He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Garrett." "What is your last name?" "Only Garrett." Eleanor arched an eyebrow, a flicker of intrigue dancing in her gaze. He lifted the cup to his lips, savoring the warmth of the tea, then let out a deep, resonant sigh that echoed the weight of his thoughts. Some men cannot stand the weight of unresolved threads. It looms in the shadows, an enigma that sends chills down the spine. I long for it to possess a deeper, more lyrical essence. Eleanor sat across from him, her arms tightly crossed, a storm brewing in her eyes. You spoke of the truth, of revealing it when the moment is all wrong. What could that possibly signify? Garrett remained silent for what felt like an eternity. His gaze wandered to the fireplace, where the flames danced softly, casting shadows that whispered secrets in the dim light. I endeavored to unveil a hidden truth. They silenced me, and now they seek to complete the task. He inclined his head, a silent agreement hanging in the air. She leaned in closer, her voice taking on a resolute edge. Listen closely, Garrett. Who are you, shrouded in mystery? But if I'm putting my life on the line for you, I demand more than just vague hints. What secrets did you unveil? His lips pressed together, a silent storm brewing beneath the surface. Whispers of a cover-up linger in the shadows, tantalizing and elusive, beckoning the curious to uncover the truth hidden beneath layers of deception. In a realm where safety is a promise, shadows linger and uncertainty creeps in. A hospital? He glanced upward, his heart racing with surprise. Her eyes fluttered open. In the stillness of the night, your voice broke through the silence, whispering secrets only the darkness could hear. In the heart of the city stood the Samuel and Drake Memorial, a solemn tribute that whispered tales of bravery and sacrifice. The air was thick with reverence, as visitors paused to reflect on the lives etched in stone, each name a reminder of the courage that once walked among them. Shadows danced in the fading light, casting an ethereal glow over the memorial, inviting all who approached to delve into the there stands our hospital. It once was. It has become a secret realm. Garrett's gaze locked onto her, silence stretching between them like a taut wire, thick with unspoken words. Is that all there is? Eleanor spoke, her voice laced with urgency. There's an undeniable link that ties you to that place, a thread woven into the very fabric of your being. He placed the cup down with deliberate caution. Garrett reclined, a grimace twisting his features. Not today. Eleanor felt an insatiable urge to delve deeper. Yet, there was an unmistakable edge in his voice that urged her to halt. With a deep sigh, she pressed her fingers against her temples, seeking relief from the weight of her thoughts. All right, she said, her voice steady, yet laced with an undercurrent of anticipation. Yet, if armed men appear once more, I demand answers. I will protect you from their harm. Her gaze pierced through him, searching for secrets hidden beneath the surface. Your words echo with the weight of a vow once spoken, a haunting familiarity that lingers in the air. I have. A heavy silence enveloped the room, thick and palpable, as if the very air held its breath. The fire crackled softly, its warm glow flickering in the dim room, casting dancing shadows on the walls, whispering secrets of the night. Outside, the birds began to sing once more, their melodies weaving through the air, as if the world had already turned the page to a new chapter. Eleanor rose to her feet, her fingers gripping the fabric as she drew the curtains shut, sealing the outside world away. She glanced back at Garrett, who seemed diminished in the soft light of dawn. Not frail, merely human. I'll conjure up a pot of soup for you. It's the one dish I can prepare that won't lead to disaster. He offered a fleeting smile, one that hinted at secrets untold. That is an intriguing beginning. With each step toward the kitchen, Eleanor felt the tremors in her hands intensify, a silent echo of the turmoil brewing within her. Yet inexplicably, her heart had found a steady rhythm. She remained oblivious to the true nature of Garrett. Not just yet. Yet, an unshakable instinct whispered to her that this man, this wounded stranger sprawled on her couch, was poised to alter the course of her life forever. 2 days slipped away, each moment heavy with anticipation. Garrett was on the path to recovery, but it was a slow and arduous journey. The swelling on his jaw had receded, the bruises transforming from a deep, menacing purple to a weary, dull yellow. Eleanor had assisted him in settling into the spare room, yet he stubbornly hobbled around the porch, inhaling the fragrant, pine-laden air, convinced that the motion would sharpen his thoughts. She guided him forward, her gaze constantly scanning the horizon as dusk fell each evening. Answers eluded her, shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. He was an enigma, his politeness a thin veil over a guarded demeanor that hinted at secrets untold. He devoured the meal she prepared, expressing his gratitude with unwavering sincerity. Once his strength returned, he even promised to wield an axe and chop firewood, a gesture of his appreciation. In countless ways, he embodied the essence of the perfect guest. Yet, he was a man forged in the depths of darkness. One fateful morning, Eleanor stumbled upon him outside, meticulously working on the fence line, his hands deftly maneuvering spare wire and a pair of weathered, rusted pliers. "You don't have to work," she called from the porch, her voice carrying a hint of urgency that cut through the stillness of the evening. Garrett cast a wary glance behind him, his eyes narrowing against the blinding light of the dawn. "All he had to give was raw strength," he declared. "Perhaps you could reveal your true name." His lips curled into a smile, yet silence lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken words. Eleanor let out a heavy sigh, the weight of her thoughts hanging in the air around her. As she descended the steps, a sense of anticipation filled the air, and she leaned against the fence post beside him, the world around them fading into the background. "You speak in your dreams." "Samuel," you keep calling his name, and there was an unsettling awareness that the dosage was off, a whisper of danger lurking in the shadows. A sudden sound pierced the silence. What was that? Garrett's hand stilled on the wire, caught in a moment that felt suspended in time. Silence hung in the air, stretching out like an eternity as he remained still, lost in thought. At last, he broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. "Samuel was my brother." Eleanor blinked, her eyes wide with disbelief. What was that? His life slipped away within the sterile walls of the hospital. It wasn't due to an accident, nor was it because the illness proved too powerful. His life was snuffed out by the reckless deceit of those who chose to cut corners, their lies weaving a dark tapestry of betrayal that would haunt them forever. Her gaze locked onto him, unyielding and intense. "Drake Memorial?" Garrett gave a single, deliberate nod. "Were you a patient there as well?" "No." He locked his gaze with hers. "I crafted it with my own hands." Her breath hitched in her throat. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the tranquil morning air was violently disrupted. The earth-shaking growl of engines ripped through the vast expanse of fields. Beyond the fence line, 3 black trucks thundered forward, their wheels kicking up dense clouds of dust, sunlight flashing off their metallic bodies like ravenous predators stalking their prey. Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat. Garrett let the pliers slip from his grasp, his body tensing, jaw tightening with an unspoken tension. Within the confines of the room, he erupted. Her voice sliced through the air like a whip crack, sharp and commanding. "You can't go out there by yourself," she insisted, her voice laced with urgency. "I won't allow them the chance to hurt you again. They don't desire me. They will come for you if they believe you stand by my side." One of the men had already caught sight of them, his arm shooting out of the window, finger jabbing straight at their direction. "Go!" Garrett barked once more, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Eleanor whirled around, her heart racing as she dashed not toward the house, but toward the looming silhouette of the barn. With a desperate leap, she threw herself behind the heavy door, her heart racing wildly in her ears. With bated breath, she pressed her eye against the narrow opening, witnessing Garrett's graceful leap as he mounted the mare, a seamless dance of strength and agility. Without saddle or bridle, they relied solely on primal instinct and an overwhelming sense of urgency. With a fierce determination, he drove his heels into the mare's sides, urging her forward with a surge of adrenaline. The horse let out a piercing shriek, its powerful body surging forward with a wild intensity. Garrett gripped the reins with white-knuckled intensity, the leather snapping like a whip as they surged forward across the vast, untamed field. The trucks crashed through the outer fence, sending splinters spiraling through the air like deadly shrapnel. The tires shrieked as they clawed at the ground, engines roaring with an unbridled fury. A sudden, piercing crack shattered the silence. One of the men pulled the trigger, sending a warning shot echoing through the tense air. Eleanor gasped, instinctively ducking as her fingers clawed into the splintered wood, heart racing with adrenaline. Garrett crouched low over the mare's neck, murmuring secrets meant solely for her ears. They raced down the slope, a cacophony of hooves striking the earth with relentless power. Water erupted in shimmering arcs as they barreled through the shallow creek. The trucks careened wildly behind them, skidding across the treacherous muddy banks, their tires hurling rocks and dirt into the swirling chaos of the air. In the lead truck, a man leaned out, the revolver catching the sunlight and gleaming with a chilling intensity. Dominic Voss stood at the edge of the world, a figure cloaked in shadows, his name whispered among those who dared to speak it. The air crackled with tension, and the weight of his presence loomed large, hinting at the secrets he carried and the destiny that awaited him. Garrett's gaze sliced through the shadows of the woods ahead, a tension crackling in the air. Without a moment's pause, with a fierce tug, he pulled the reins tight. The mare twisted violently, her muscles taut with effort, and dove into the shadowy embrace of the thick trees. The fog coiled and slithered through the pines, enveloping them in a shroud that felt almost sentient. In an instant, Garrett was swallowed by the swirling mist, leaving nothing but an eerie silence in his wake. The trucks came to a screeching stop at the forest's edge, their metal frames protesting with a haunting groan. Doors burst open, boots thundered against the ground. They advanced on foot, weapons at the ready, their voices slicing through the tension with sharp commands. Eleanor stood frozen, her breath coming in sharp gasps, her heart pounding so fiercely that she felt certain it echoed in the silence around her. 10 minutes, then 20. Suddenly, a piercing, primal scream echoed across the valley. Eleanor sprinted forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The branches reached out like desperate hands, scratching at her face, while the mud clung to her boots, trying to pull her down. Yet, she pressed on, driven by an instinct she couldn't ignore. She raced through the dense woods, scrambling up the treacherous slope. And there they stood, a presence that commanded attention. In a clearing thick with swirling mist and shattered branches, Garrett found himself utterly alone. Crimson smeared across his temple, his shirt tattered and caked with dirt. One of the attackers convulsed on the ground, his hands desperately gripping his ribs. The other two advanced on Garrett, weapons at the ready, their intentions clear and menacing. 3 stood resolute, facing the lone figure before them. Garrett stood resolute, unyielding in the face of the storm around him. With a thunderous roar, he charged at the closest man, colliding with him in a brutal tackle that sent them both crashing into the mud, fists raining down in a flurry of chaos. Grunts echoed through the air, curses flew like arrows, and the heavy thud of bodies crashing to the ground reverberated all around. But lurking in the shadows, a click echoed ominously. "Enough!" Dominic growled, his voice a low, menacing whisper that sent chills down the spine. Garrett stood motionless, his chest rising and falling with frantic breaths. Eleanor pressed herself against the rough bark of the tree, her heart racing as a silent scream clawed at her throat, desperate to escape. Then came the sirens, piercing and shrill, slicing through the fog like a razor's edge. Dominic unleashed a torrent of curses, each word dripping with fury. The men raced through the dense thicket, urgency fueling their every move as they hoisted their injured comrade, desperation driving them toward the waiting trucks. Engines thundered back to life, filling the air with a primal energy. Eleanor lurched ahead, her legs quaking beneath her weight. Amidst the swirling fog, piercing blue lights cut through the darkness, illuminating the night with an urgent intensity. 2 patrol SUVs screeched to a stop, tires squealing as deputies burst from the vehicles, weapons drawn and ready for action. Garrett, bruised and bleeding, collapsed to his knees, arms lifted in surrender. The seasoned deputy, his gray beard framing a face etched with experience, narrowed his eyes, tension crackling in the air, before he deliberately lowered his rifle. "Son of a gun," he muttered, the words slipping from his lips like a secret too heavy to bear. "It truly is Garrett Sullivan." Eleanor's world spun on its axis, unraveling everything she thought she knew. "Sullivan? Is it at Sullivan Memorial Hospital?" With each unsteady step, she drew nearer, her gaze locking onto Garrett with newfound clarity. With every barrier shattered, the final veil lifted. What remained was the unvarnished truth, stark and inescapable. Eleanor stood frozen, the name reverberating in her mind like a haunting melody. Garrett Sullivan stood at the edge of the world, a figure cloaked in mystery and determination. She had encountered it time and again, in hushed tones, in the remnants of old headlines, in the swirling gossip of the town about the enigmatic figure who constructed Sullivan Memorial Hospital, and then inexplicably disappeared. To some, he was a charlatan, a deceiver cloaked in shadows. To others, he stood as a beacon of sacrifice, a martyr for a cause greater than himself. No one truly understood. She had believed Garrett was merely a wanderer, a soul fleeing from shadows of his own making. Yet this, a tempest brewed for decades, its fury finally unleashed. As the deputies guided him toward their SUV, Eleanor stepped aside, her heart racing wildly in her chest. Garrett glanced at her, his face a mask of mystery, burdened by the heavy silence of countless unvoiced secrets. "Ma'am," the older deputy said, tipping his hat with a solemn nod. "We'll need your statement." With a subtle yet determined nod, she acknowledged the weight of the moment. Absolute. Garrett found himself ensnared, not bound by cuffs, yet unmistakably trapped. Eleanor trailed behind in her truck, her grip on the steering wheel so fierce that her fingers throbbed with pain. In the dim light of the station, she lingered in the waiting area, a hollow shell of herself. After what felt like an eternity, the deputy finally reappeared. "It seems that the cowboy you've been concealing is far from ordinary." Eleanor blinked in disbelief. "That's Dr. Garrett Sullivan," she whispered, her heart racing. "Physician. With a prestigious education from Harvard, they established the Sullivan Memorial, a beacon of hope and progress." However, as time passed, shadows crept in, and the once thriving institution began to unravel, leading to unforeseen challenges and turmoil. A life had been extinguished. His younger brother Samuel lay lifeless, the shadows of a supposed overdose looming over him like a dark cloud. Shrouding the truth in mystery, Garrett became the scapegoat for the board's failures. He vanished without a trace. Whispers circulated among the townsfolk, a dark cloud of suspicion hanging over his tragic end, as many believed he had chosen to end it all himself. It became clear that he had vanished into the shadows, slipping beneath the surface of the world above. Eleanor's mind drifted, the words fading into a distant echo. Her mind whirled in a tempest of thoughts. Later, she found herself in a dimly lit room, where Garrett awaited her, his body marked by bruises and wrapped in bandages. His gaze lifted as she stepped inside, a hush enveloping the room. With a soft click, she shut the door, sealing herself away from the world beyond. "Your words were a deception. I didn't tell the truth," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "A distinction exists. You whispered to me that your name was simply Garrett. Indeed, it is. Sullivan is a name that lingers in the shadows of my past. Why is it that the shadows whisper secrets, and the air thickens with unspoken questions? Why does the heart race at the edge of the unknown, yearning for answers that dance just out of reach? Why does the world seem to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when everything will be revealed? Why?" she inquired, her arms crossed defiantly. "Truth has a deadly price, and those who dare to speak it often pay with their lives. I fought to shield Samuel from the storm that threatened to engulf him." He uncovered troubling discrepancies in the hospital's pharmacy records, manipulated data, perilous errors lurking in the shadows. He delivered it to me, a weighty promise wrapped in mystery. I vowed to protect him at all costs. The following day, he was gone, and Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat. They labeled it an allergic reaction, yet after his death, someone tampered with his file. He had never intended to be on that medication. Who was responsible? She inquired. Dominic Voss stood alongside two others on the board, their fates intertwined in a web of intrigue. Samuel had uncovered undeniable evidence of their deceit, revealing a web of corner-cutting and embezzlement that threatened to unravel everything. Why not seek the help of the authorities? I made the bold decision to step into the light. The board twisted the story, casting shadows over my truth. In just a week, my world crumbled to dust. And so I vanished, slipping away into the shadows, driven by the need to uncover the truth in silence. until they discovered you once more," Eleanor whispered. Garrett gave a solemn nod, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging in the air around him. Dominic must have sensed my return to Red Hollow. Eleanor turned her gaze, her hand brushing away the tears that threatened to spill. "If only you had confided in me, I would have been there to help you. I never intended to pull you into this mess. You have already accomplished it." The air thickened with an uneasy stillness, stretching the silence into an eternity. Then Garrett spoke, his voice a whisper, laced with an intimacy that drew everyone closer. Survival seemed like a distant dream as the darkness closed in around me that night. In that moment, I stood on the precipice, a chilling acceptance washing over me. I was ready to die, but then, a shadow flickered across the room, sending a chill down her spine. The door creaked open, revealing the unknown beyond. Eleanor's throat tightened as she swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "You saved my life as well, Garrett. Long before I discovered your true identity." He lifted his gaze, weariness etched in his features. Yet, a profound truth shimmered within his eyes. "I still don't know everything," she confessed, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Yet, deep down I understand that you are not the monster they painted you to be. And I understand the depth of your love for your brother." Garrett's jaw clenched tightly. With a subtle nod, he acknowledged the weight of the moment. "I'll help you," Eleanor vowed, her voice steady and resolute. "We will complete the mission that Samuel began." Eleanor stood at the entrance of Sullivan Memorial Hospital, a place she had never set foot in since its ownership had shifted, her heart racing with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. The space had transformed into a bustling hub of calm. Shimmering floors stretched out beneath harsh, unyielding lights, while the familiar warmth of antiseptic gave way to an unsettling clinical aroma that whispered of corporate sterility. The old brass plaque that once bore Garrett's name had vanished into the shadows of time, replaced by a sleek logo, its contours etched in brushed metal, gleaming with a cold modern elegance. In the dimly lit lobby, she stood, her fingers tightly gripping a weathered manila folder tucked beneath her arm. Within the confines of the room lay the remnants of a life once lived. Copies of the documents Garrett had entrusted to her, patient reports that whispered secrets of suffering, pharmacy inventory lists that hinted at that desperation, and the frantic at desperation. And the frantic, hand-scribbled notes Samuel had penned in his final moments. Pages Garrett had protected for years, as if they were sacred relics, holding secrets that could change everything. Eleanor approached the reception desk, her heart racing as she inhaled deeply, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "I'm here to see Dr. Harrison Pierce," she declared, her voice steady and unwavering. The receptionist arched an eyebrow, a flicker of intrigue dancing in her gaze. "Do you possess an appointment?" "No, but he will be eager to see me. In the heart of the narrative lies Dr. Garrett Sullivan." The receptionist hesitated, her gaze drifting momentarily as if caught in a web of unspoken thoughts. The name hung in the air, altering the very atmosphere of the room. With a swift motion, she grasped the phone, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke. A subtle nod directed attention down the shadowy hallway. "On the third floor, at the very end of the corridor, lies the last door on the right." Dr. Harrison Pierce lingered in the dimly lit corridors of the hospital, one of the few souls left who could still recall the man Garrett had been before the storm of scandal swept through their lives. A seasoned surgeon, wise and measured, standing apart as one of the rare few who had not openly declared allegiance in the unfolding turmoil. Eleanor clung to the hope that it signified he possessed a conscience. She discovered him hunched over a desk, intently scrutinizing a file through a magnifier clipped to his glasses. As she stepped inside, his gaze lifted gradually, a mixture of surprise and intrigue flickering in his eyes. "How may I assist you?" "I am Eleanor Hayes," she declared. "I've uncovered the truth about what transpired with Samuel Sullivan and Garrett." The name struck him like a bolt, sending a shiver down his spine. He reclined, his gaze fixed intently upon her. "Continue." With a deliberate motion, she set the folder down before him, the weight of its contents palpable in the air. "Garrett lives on. He's been lurking in the shadows ever since that fateful day. Once more, They have attempted to take his life. Dominic Voss and his crew stood at the edge of the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Dr. Harrison Pierce cracked open the folder, his fingers dancing over the pages as he delved into the secrets contained within. His gaze swept over Samuel's scrawled notes, the meticulous pharmacy logs, the deceptive approvals that whispered secrets of betrayal. She observed the transformation of his expression, shifting from a mask of indifference to a dawning disbelief, and ultimately settling into a deep, unsettling horror that seemed to expand within him. "I always knew something was off," he whispered, his voice laced with a haunting certainty. Samuel moved with a calculated precision, his brilliance illuminating every step he took. He meticulously scrutinized every detail. The allergy note etched in his chart loomed ominously. It vanished the very next day after he took his last breath. Eleanor settled into her seat, her gaze locked onto him with an intensity that filled the air between them. Garrett is desperate for someone to confirm this, a figure shrouded in trust and respect. Dr. Harrison Pierce's gaze locked onto her, a silent tension hanging in the air. "What about you? I'm not a healer. I am not a healer. I'm not a healer." In the stillness of the night, I discovered a bleeding man on my porch, and in that moment, I made a choice that would change everything. I would not let him die. Uncertainty cloaked my mind as I stood before him, a stranger whose identity remained shrouded in mystery. But now, I understand, and I trust him completely. He scrutinized her intently, his gaze lingering before he finally nodded. A slow, deliberate motion that hinted at unspoken thoughts. I held on to the old staff reports, their faded pages whispering secrets of the past. The board compelled us to obliterate it all. Yet I had already rescued them from the brink. Uncertainty lingered in the air, a haunting question that echoed in the depths of my mind. I never knew why. Yet perhaps this is the reason. United in purpose, they delved into the depths of dusty files, meticulously assembling fragments of old rosters, medical logs, and cryptic emails. Eleanor's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears as the image began to take shape before her eyes. Unmistakable signs of manipulation, forged signatures, prescriptions reshoed untouched and waiting in the shadows, never to have felt the pulse of life they were meant to sustain. With each turn of the page, Garrett's tale unfolded, weaving a narrative that demanded to be believed. As she stepped back into the station that evening, her gaze fell upon Garrett, who was perched on the same cot, engrossed in a worn paperback that had been left behind by a previous visitor. As she entered the room, she let the updated folder fall onto his lap with a decisive thud. "Dr. Harrison Pierce recalls," she uttered, "and he holds the evidence in his hands." Garrett blinked, his mind reeling in disbelief. "He came to your aid?" "He placed his trust in me. He trusts you completely." He let out a slow breath, leaning in closer, his fingers deftly flipping through the scattered papers. His hands quivered ever so slightly. "This is it," he breathed, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. "This is what I craved 5 years ago." Eleanor settled into the space beside him, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Then let us ensure it never fades into the shadows once more." For the next few hours, they toiled side by side, their efforts intertwining like threads in a tapestry, each moment charged with purpose and anticipation. Garrett led her through a labyrinth of names, dates, and intricate connections. Eleanor's fingers danced across the keyboard, crafting a meticulous timeline on her laptop, while Garrett meticulously annotated the documents, his highlighter tracing the contours of each forged signature, every altered dosage order, and the names of those who had conspired to shroud the truth in darkness. As the last task came to a close, Garrett sank into a seat, fatigue washing over him like a heavy tide. Never in my wildest dreams did I foresee reaching this point. Why not indeed? As the world relentlessly pushes forward, in the shadows of memory, people fade away, slipping through the cracks of time like whispers in the wind. They allowed the shadows to creep in, slowly erasing the vibrant colors of their memories. Justice moves like a relentless tide, slow and merciless, and by the time it finally arrives, the world has turned its gaze elsewhere. Eleanor's gaze locked onto him, her voice barely a whisper. "It's fortunate that someone was still searching for you." Garrett fixed his eyes on her, silence stretching between them like a taut wire, heavy with unspoken words. At last, the silence shattered as he finally found his voice. "This was never meant to be your burden to bear." She nodded in agreement, yet deep down, I knew I would choose the same path once more. He extended his hand, his fingers softly grazing hers, igniting a spark between them. "My deepest gratitude." Eleanor's lips curled into a smile, a glimmer of warmth lighting up her eyes. "The journey is far from over, Sullivan. There's still one final task that awaits us. What is that mysterious presence lurking in the shadows?" "Command the attention of every soul in this town." Under the cloak of darkness, Garrett poured his heart onto the page, crafting a letter that would unveil the raw truth. Each word, etched in his own hand, chronicled the harrowing journey from the moment Samuel's life was extinguished to the chilling night he found himself bleeding on Eleanor's porch. Eleanor, her fingers dancing across the keyboard, transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary, an amalgamation of power, intimacy, truth, and heartbreak. United in purpose, they readied it for the world beyond. The truth, at long last, stood poised to exhale its secrets. As dusk settled over the town, an eerie silence enveloped the town hall, casting shadows that danced along its wall. The faint hum of aging fluorescent lights mingled with the sporadic creak of wooden floorboards, creating an eerie symphony that reverberated through the desolate chambers. Eleanor stood by the window, her gaze fixed on the shadows that danced and elongated across the main square, each movement whispering secrets of the night. Garrett moved restlessly behind her, a coiled spring of tension, his silence thickening the air around them. All was in place, the pieces meticulously arranged for what was to come. Under the guise of a settlement, they orchestrated a meeting, a carefully crafted opportunity to delve into the contentious issue of reopening the funding foundation for Sullivan Memorial. A deception, undeniably, yet just credible enough to draw Dominic Voss and the other board members back into the fray. With Garrett's compelling evidence and Morrison's unwavering testimony, the sheriff had finally relented, agreeing to set up audio surveillance in the room, accompanied by a concealed camera that would capture every moment. The objective was clear: coax them into conversation, draw out their confessions, and unveil the truth hidden beneath layers of deceit. "Do you truly believe in this decision?" Eleanor turned toward Garrett, her eyes searching for answers. He gave a solemn nod, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging in the air. "They must believe I am desperate enough to make a deal." In those moments, men like Dominic bask in a false sense of invincibility, and it is precisely then that they begin to falter. Eleanor swallowed hard, her throat tightening as uncertainty washed over her. "If anything goes wrong, I know," he murmured, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But I refuse to allow them to claim another soul. Not again." Footsteps reverberated through the dimly lit hallway, each sound a haunting reminder of the presence that lingered just out of sight. The sheriff stepped inside, a subtle nod escaping his lips as he surveyed the scene. Dominic Voss strode forward, flanked by two men in impeccably tailored suits, their presence a silent promise of power and intrigue. Dominic remained unchanged, a constant in a world that swirled with uncertainty. Flawless strands cascade effortlessly, a veneer of cheer masking the depths within, while those eyes, unyielding and frigid, betray nothing of the turmoil beneath. "Ah," he exclaimed, arms wide open, as though welcoming a long-lost companion. Dr. Sullivan stood at the edge of the dimly lit laboratory, the air thick with anticipation. Shadows danced across the walls, whispering secrets of the unknown. Every tick of the clock echoed like a heartbeat, urging him forward into the depths of discovery. Or perhaps I should refer to it as the specter of him. Garrett stood resolute, unyielding in the face of the storm around him. "Let us bypass the formalities." They gathered around the imposing long oak table, each finding their place in the unfolding drama. Eleanor perched beside Garrett, her hands clasped tightly, her heart racing with anticipation. "I want a deal," Garrett began, his voice steady, a calm intensity radiating from him. "Bring back the Samuel Sullivan Fund. The investigation must be reopened. Vindicate my honor. In return, I turn and leave." I remained silent. Dominic reclined, the weight of the world pressing against him. "That is not the way leverage operates. You vanish, don't you recall? They believe you succumb to the depths, a victim of your own remorse. As I returned, the weight of the decay you abandoned loomed large, and Dominic let out a low chuckle. What decay lurks here? In the shadows of forgotten memories, Samuel fades into obscurity, a name whispered, but never truly acknowledged. Or you. You do, Garrett said, his voice steady, a hint of challenge flickering in his eyes. And that is all it takes. Eleanor's gaze fixated on the red light of the concealed recorder, its steady blink pulsing like a heartbeat in the silence. Let's be honest, one of the board members declared, a whitey silence settling over the room. Samuel was a ticking time bomb, a brilliant child, yet insatiably inquisitive. He stood in the path, an obstacle that could not be ignored. Garrett's jaw clenched, a storm brewing behind his eyes. Dominic gave a solemn nod, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging in the air around him. It was a bitter twist of fate, yet an unavoidable choice. If you had the courage, you would have taken the same path. The words lingered, suspended in the charged atmosphere. The sheriff crashed through the nearby door, weapon at the ready. That is more than enough. Dominic sprang to his feet, his eyes aflame with intensity. What in the world is this? You are under arrest for conspiracy, medical malpractice, and attempted murder, the sheriff declared, his voice chillingly devoid of emotion. You and every last one of your schemes. The two board members stood paralyzed, their eyes wide with fear as deputies stormed in behind the sheriff, weapons drawn and ready. Yet, Dominic surged ahead with unmatched speed. With a swift motion, he drew a pistol from the depths of his jacket, the cold metal glinting ominously as he aimed it squarely at Eleanor. "Don't move," he shouted, his voice slicing through the tension in the air. Garrett surged forward, urgency propelling him onward. With a fierce determination, he lunged forward, shoving Eleanor to the ground as he positioned himself between her and the deadly bullet that sliced through the air. Oh, the shot pierced the air, a jarring, thunderous explosion that shattered the silence. Garrett faltered, pain searing through him as he sank to one knee, gasping for breath. "Garrett!" Eleanor screamed, her voice piercing through the air like a desperate plea. The sheriff tumbled backward, his gun clattering across the floor, echoing the chaos that erupted around him. The deputies stormed in, swiftly subduing him as Garrett crumpled to the ground, his strength fading away. Crimson stains blossomed across his shirt, a vivid testament to the chaos that had just unfolded. Eleanor crawled toward him, her hands instinctively pressing against the gaping wound, urgency coursing through her veins. "Do not leave my side. Garrett, I implore you." His eyes snapped open, as if awakening from a deep slumber, revealing a world that felt both familiar and foreign. Yet, the sting of a bullet is a pain I can never grow to accept. "Silence," she urged, her voice barely a breath, as she fought to suppress the tears threatening to spill over. The sheriff dropped to his knees, urgency coursing through him as he called for paramedics, the crackle of the radio echoing in the tense silence. "They are approaching, drawing nearer with every passing moment. Brace yourself, my boy." Garrett's hand rose, clutching Eleanor's feebly, a fragile connection in the midst of uncertainty. "Did we catch them?" She nodded, her tears cascading down her cheeks like a silent river of sorrow. "We captured every last one of them." A subtle smile danced at the corners of his lips. At last, Samuel can finally find solace in rest. His head fell back, lifeless, as the wailing sirens echoed ominously in the distance. Eleanor clung to him, trembling, her breath a soft murmur of promises that danced between them in the dim light. Vows echoed in the air, a solemn pledge that he would defy death, that he would return, not just for her, but for the very essence of their struggle, for the unwavering pursuit of truth, for the relentless fight for justice, and for Samuel. The ICU room lay shrouded in an unsettling chill, its silence heavy and oppressive. The machines emitted a relentless symphony of beeps beside Garrett's hospital bed, each sound a haunting reminder of his fragile grip on life, teetering on the edge of existence. Tubes snaked from his arms and nostrils, a lifeline tethering him to the world around him. A monitor captured the rhythm of his heart, slow and defiant, each beat echoing with a stubborn resolve. Eleanor remained frozen in her chair, the world around her fading into a blur for a full 24 hours. She perched on the edge of her seat, spine rigid, hands clenched in her lap, her gaze locked onto Garrett's face with an intensity that could ignite a fire. His skin glowed a ghostly white, and his lips were chapped and bleeding. The bullet had been extracted, yet the wounds ran far deeper than the surface could reveal. The doctor's words hung in the air, heavy with urgency. The next 48 hours would be crucial. Eleanor nodded, her silence heavy with unspoken resolve. Before she turned back to her post, watchful and unwavering, she stood her ground, unwilling to return home. A nurse approached, cradling a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. One of them stepped forward, proposing to fetch a cot. Eleanor turned away from both offers, her resolve unyielding. She was bound to him, her heart tethered in a way that made escape impossible. Not at this moment. Not after everything they had endured. Not after the intensity in his gaze when he inquired if they had captured them. She had whispered her agreement, yet the shadows of her silence hinted at secrets untold, leaving him to wonder what else she had claimed in the depths of her heart. His entire saga, the gaze of the masses, and the reality, now blazing like an uncontrollable inferno through Red Hollow and far beyond. The sheriff stood before the cameras that morning, the weight of the recordings Garrett and Eleanor had painstakingly gathered hanging in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. Dr. Harrison Pierce had confirmed every word with unwavering certainty. One by one, former employees stepped into the light, revealing the truths they had long kept buried in the shadows of fear. Dominic Voss, along with the two board members, found themselves shackled by the unforgiving grip of the law. Their pleas for bail met with a resounding denial. Investigations unfolded, drawing the attention of both state and federal authorities. In a whirlwind of events, Garrett's name was exonerated in under 12 hours. Yet Garrett remained shrouded in silence. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she retrieved a folded letter from the depths of her coat pocket. It was ancient, its pages yellowed and creased, whispering secrets of the past. It was addressed to my brother, a haunting farewell I could never voice. With a deliberate motion, she unfolded it, revealing the secrets hidden within its creases. Her fingers trembled as she began to read aloud, each word a whisper of anticipation hanging in the air. Samuel, I was meant to shield you from harm. The pact had been etched in stone from the very beginning. In the shadows, a vigilant presence looms, ever watchful, ensuring that no secret goes unnoticed. Yet, I allowed you to face that tempest all by yourself. I had faith that the system would act justly. I had been mistaken. Her voice trembled, breaking the silence like glass shattering on the floor. She hesitated, her throat tightening as she fought to regain her composure. They sought to stifle my voice in the wake of your departure. I fought to erase you from my mind. Yet, I never found the courage to do so. With each step I've taken since the day they laid you to rest, I've carried you with me. I transformed into a specter, not out of a desire to vanish, but driven by an insatiable need to linger in their shadows, until they shattered beneath the weight of my presence. Eleanor gazed intently at Garrett's unmoving visage. I discovered your letter, Garrett. I delved into its pages. It seemed that Samuel had caught wind of your presence. Perhaps in the depths of his heart, he found it within himself to forgive you long before you ever learned to forgive your own soul. With a gentle grace, she rose and approached the bed, her fingers delicately sweeping a stray lock of hair from his forehead. The time for fleeing has come to an end. The moment has arrived to return. Time stretched, a minute slipping by like sand through fingers. Then another one emerged from the shadows. Then, with a subtle tremor, his eyelids began to flutter. Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat. Garrett. Her voice barely broke the silence, a soft whisper that danced through the air. His eyes flickered open, initially clouded and disoriented, before locking onto her presence. He blinked, his throat dry, and then croaked out a sound that barely resembled words. Had I crossed the threshold into the unknown? She laughed, her eyes glistening with the rush of tears. So close, yet I would not allow it. He forced a smile, a flicker of pain crossing his face as he moved. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. A bedside manner that chills to the bone. Your needs are anything but simple. His gaze deepened with warmth. You chose to remain. You chose to remain. I promised you I would. The stillness stretched on, heavy and unyielding. In the hushed symphony of whirring machines and distant echoes, Garrett leaned in and whispered, "Is it truly over?" "Yes," she replied, her head bobbing slightly in agreement. "The end has come. You have been set free." Garrett averted his gaze, lost in thought for a fleeting moment. Uncertainty loomed over me like a thick fog, leaving me at a crossroads with no clear path ahead. For what felt like an eternity, I battled on. Life feels like an uncharted territory, a vast expanse where I wander aimlessly, searching for a path that seems forever elusive. Eleanor leaned forward, her heart racing as she took his hand. "In the beginning, everything begins with a single step. Each day unfolds like a new chapter, filled with its own challenges and triumphs, perhaps accompanied by the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. And then, the dawn broke, casting its golden light across the horizon. And a person who stands unwavering, determined to never let you go." His fingers curled softly around hers, a delicate connection that sparked an unspoken promise. "I don't deserve that," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, laden with regret. "Indeed you do. Not for the person you once were, but for the extraordinary being you transformed into." His eyes sparkled with an intense light. "I used to dream of justice," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of unfulfilled hopes. "Yet, it had never appeared this way before. It never resembled you." Eleanor smiled, her thumb gliding softly over his knuckles, a spark of connection igniting between them. "Perhaps the moment has come to awaken from the dreams and embrace the reality of life." He nodded faintly, weariness etched across his features. Yet a flicker of something deeper danced in his eyes. Tranquility. Eleanor leaned in, her lips brushing gently against his forehead, a tender moment suspended in time. "Garrett, you returned." Nothing else holds significance. For the first time in years, Garrett Sullivan finally surrendered to the darkness, closing his eyes, not to flee from the world, but to finally find solace within it, with utmost care. Next to the only soul who had steadfastly held on, refusing to release him from their grasp. After 3 long weeks, the doors of Sullivan Memorial Hospital swung open once more, inviting a wave of anticipation and uncertainty. Not for a crisis, but for a moment of joy. The parking lot thrummed with energy. News vans crowded the curb, their cameras poised like hungry predators, ready to capture the unfolding drama. People gathered, drawn together not by fear, but by a stirring presence that Red Hollow had not experienced in years. Hope flickered like a distant star, a beacon in the vast darkness, urging the weary to press on, to believe in the possibility of dawn. A striking banner hung at the entrance, its deep blue fabric commanding attention and radiating a sense of intrigue. The Samuel Sullivan Healing Center. Garrett stood at the podium, a figure of quiet strength, clad in a simple white shirt and jeans, ready to honor his brother's legacy. His boots bore the scars of the journey that had led him home. Beside him stood Eleanor, a vision of tranquility in her sundress, her hands delicately clasped together. "I am Dr. Garrett Sullivan," he began, his voice steady and commanding. For what felt like an eternity, I disappeared into the shadows, convinced that silence was the only shield I could wield to safeguard my brother's legacy. Yet, in the stillness, the weight of the injustice surged, echoing through the void. He stole a glance at Eleanor, their eyes locking in a moment charged with unspoken pride. "I'm no hero," he continued, his voice heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "My presence here is a testament to the unwavering resolve of one individual who would not allow me to surrender. Today, we stand amidst the ruins, refusing to reconstruct what has been shattered. We create what was destined to exist. A sanctuary of restoration. A sanctuary for Samuel." The crowd burst into a thunderous applause, a wave of sound crashing over the scene. Cheers erupted from some, while others were overcome with tears. Eleanor's fingers brushed against his, a spark igniting between them as she reached for his hand, the world around them fading into a blur. As twilight descended, they wandered through the freshly christened corridors, each step echoing with the whispers of history. A vibrant mural of Garrett and Samuel welcomed visitors, its colors alive and radiant, captured from an old photograph and illuminated by the warm embrace of sunlight. Eleanor donned a fresh badge, emblazoned with the title, Director of Community Outreach. Who is the mastermind behind this vision? Garrett taunted playfully. If I'm going to keep you out of trouble, I might as well claim the title, she declared, her voice laced with determination. He smiled, a flicker of pain crossing his face. Though his ribs still throbbed, the agony had dulled into a sensation he could endure. Much like the haunting echoes of the past, I never imagined I would return. Why did you? She asked, her voice laced with curiosity and a hint of urgency. Well, he halted before the mural, captivated by its vivid colors and intricate details. Samuel deserved more than the weight of my silence, and you deserve more than just a fleeting goodbye. You gave us both everything, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. The remainder is now in your hands. He gazed at her, his voice a gentle whisper. I crave something beyond this place, Eleanor. I crave something beyond this place. I yearn for a life filled with purpose and passion. By your side, it's already in your possession. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the landscape, Eleanor's gaze drifted toward the distant hills, their silhouettes beckoning her with an air of mystery. Do you still possess that magnificent horse? Garrett's grin spread wide, a spark of mischief dancing in his eyes. Forever. As the final rays of golden light cascaded over the valley, they stepped out of the hospital, the weight of their journey heavy in the air. At the ranch, 2 horses stood poised, one a steadfast companion of Garrett, the other a newcomer, saddled and ready, their fates intertwined in the stillness of the moment. Eleanor's lips curled into a sly smirk, a glint of mischief dancing in her eyes. Did you orchestrate all of this? I held my breath, yearning for your answer, desperate for you to say yes. They galloped side by side into the vast expanse of the fields, the wind caressing their cheeks, while thistles swayed and twirled in the gentle breeze. The very ridge that had once witnessed Garrett's downfall now bore him back, not as a hunted soul, but as a man reborn. This is where you nearly met your end, Eleanor whispered, her voice laced with a haunting intensity. With a solemn nod, he acknowledged the weight of the moment. Yet, it transformed into the very sanctuary where I was reborn. As they reached the summit of the hill, their eyes fell upon the sprawling expanse of Red Hollow below. The hospital's new sign flickered to life in the distance, its glow piercing through the encroaching twilight. Garrett reined in his horse, the rhythmic thud of hooves fading into the stillness as he turned to face Eleanor. In my relentless pursuit of justice, I lost sight of the warmth of joy, a distant memory fading into the shadows. You brought it all back to me. Eleanor's fingers brushed against his, intertwining as she reached across the divide that separated them. No more running, she whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence that enveloped them. Not ever again, he vowed, his voice steady as the sun sank beneath the horizon. Together, they were poised to embrace the life they had battled so fiercely to claim. Under a sky ablaze with gold and the whispers of hope, Garrett Sullivan and Eleanor Hayes made a choice that transcended mere survival. They embraced life, ignited their love, and embarked on a journey of renewal. From the depths of sorrow emerged a powerful legacy of healing. Out of the haunting stillness of history emerged a voice that dared to unveil the truth at last. From the brink of oblivion, life surged forth, resurrected in the most unforeseen sanctuary, the very heart of another. If this tale resonated with your spirit, ignited your faith in love, redemption, or the magic of second chances, we invite you to join us by subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories. We present you with authentic, poignant stories that mend the soul, ignite the spirit, and reassure you that even in the deepest shadows of night, the promise of dawn's light awaits. Press the subscribe button, activate the notification bell, and ensure you never miss a tale that could transform your day or even your entire life. Until we meet again, hold on to your kindness, summon your strength, and keep your heart wide open to the world around you. Stories that awaken the spirit.